Going live. Hi everyone, and welcome to the third event in our manufacturing webinar series, Dynamics 365 for Process Manufacturing. My name is Gareth Boyle. I'm the Senior Marketing Executive for Microsoft at Fusion 5, and I'm joined today by Industry Director for Manufacturing, Paul Hutchings, Senior Technical Consultant, Charlie Anasty, Senior Consultant Tom Veach, and Solution Architect Janine Tiu. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before I throw over to Paul. This event will have a short presentation from the team, followed by a live Q&A session at the end. Whether you're joining us via the application or a web browser, you'll see an option to submit your questions to the panel. So please feel free to ask at any time, and I'll present your questions to the team at the end of the session. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Paul to begin the event. Paul.
Morning everyone. So today we're going to start off with forecasting. This is straight out the box D365's forecasting, and what I do is I'll actually go back into the modules and start off with the actual modules itself. So what D365 offers out of the box is a forecasting module which is using machine learning in the background. So just go into the module itself, and just a very quick explanation of how it actually works. So if I go into the demand forecasting here, and I'm going to go into the forecasting parameters. So what the forecasting parameters do is they will determine how a forecast is created. So as you can see here, I've got a parameter here. I have a demand forecast unit, so we convert everything into eaches for this particular example. I'm now saying use the statistical information for sales orders only. But if I then go over to allocation keys, I can create multiple allocation keys and choose different things. So as you can see here, this one here is using sales orders and production line issues. So if you have a product that you use in production and you also sell it, your forecast algorithm has to be different. And then if I drop down to this one here is using everything, which is very unusual, but effectively I could be ending up using projects or transfers or transactions. Each one of these also, you can set some algorithm parameters. So your two options out of the box is Azure machine learning or copy over last history. So we're going to concentrate on the Azure machine learning. And what I can do here is I can put some parameters around it so I can restrict what the algorithm is actually going to do. So as we all know, forecast hate 0. So I've got in here, I've got a minimum forecast of 1. I could have also got in here and added another one which would actually calculate what that minimum value would be if I wanted to do that. So missing substitution value, that would actually look at your historical data and work out what that value is. For this occasion, I've just decided to use 1. Okay, so once we've gone and set that up, I can then also determine I only want this particular forecast model to use ETS and a mirror in its calculation. As you can see, there's a whole lot of options here, so I can actually restrict what it wants to do. I can also set the confidence level, and I'm also forcing the seasonality into here as well, just to flatten out my forecast a bit. So what happens is that you will actually create a web service key and an endpoint. And what this effectively does is this will actually link the forecast model to the machine learning. And if I just bring up machine learning to give you an idea, this one here is a model that I've created, which I'm currently using. And this one here is using RScript. And what it effectively does is it takes your input, your data from D365, it goes through an algorithm, splits it all out, and then returns it. Now, you can get quite complicated in the way you actually do this. So what I'm doing here is I'm bringing up a full time series key, and this one here is probably about as complicated as you're possibly going to get. And effectively what it does is it takes your data from a single point. I've also got the ability at this point here to add extra data in as well, and I'll swing back to that shortly. So what I can do then is I can then run algorithms over the top of it, and then effectively what I'm doing is I'm running multiple algorithms and I'm comparing the output, and then that's going to give me the best fit as far as the result goes. So if you've got somebody that enjoys setting up this type of stuff, they're going to have an absolute field day. But to be quite honest, the first algorithm I showed you is probably the most standard one used, which is this one here. And effectively, we're not running multiple algorithms on here. What we're doing is we're running the same algorithm over the top and then working out what the best fit is. So once that's actually been done, it will then go back to this. And I just close this here down. And what I'm going to do here is I can then go in and show the history. So if I go into my forecast parameters again, and so this one here would then run across it. We've got forecast dimensions, so you can also choose what forecast level you actually want to forecast in. So at the moment, we're looking at item number, dimension, warehouse, customer group. We can also run it a customer account, inventory status, country, region, or state. So it's reasonably flexible of what we can actually run. Now, I'll be honest with you, this works out really well, but the moment we turn things like promotions on, it really will struggle to actually pick up your promotional data. Okay, so as we go and run this, we get an output. So if I just have a look into the output there, so here we go. Forecasting. And so when I want to run a forecast, I will actually select the date. So I have an horizon. So I go and put in the dates that I actually want it to calculate the forecast to and when it actually starts from. And then as we go down the bottom here, we can also include intercompany groups. So you can also make sure this forecasting for intercompany. And then once we get down here, we then decide on what size buckets. We can do daily, weekly, or monthly. And then I have a forecast horizon. That is how many buckets it's actually getting used. I've also got a freeze time fence in case we actually want to freeze the current forecast. This is quite common. Okay, so once it goes and runs, it then produces us an adjusted forecast demand. So what the adjusted forecast demand is, it gives me all the forecasts that have actually run. And if I just scroll down here, we have a look at, let's go and pick this line here, for instance. Right, this is for a USP company. RC3121 is the forecast item, and it is forecasting for warehouse 15. And as you can see, this particular item is forecast in multiple warehouses. So as I go across here, I can see my forecast demand, and you'll notice there's one here that's bold. What we have the ability to do is that we can actually manually update the forecast line, but what happens is we actually track the manual adjustment we do. So if I now drill into that forecast line details, and I can see in here, I've got my forecast, and this is my baseline forecast. Then I look down here, I can actually see the 4,000 that I've gone and put in, and what you can see here is the 1913.24 is the adjustment I've actually made to the forecast. Now, each forecast model as it runs will actually work out the mapping for me and tell me what model it used for each individual period. So just because I've got a single item, I could potentially end up with a different forecasting model per period. Down the bottom here, we have a graphical display of how our forecast is actually looking, and you can see in here, this is the spike of the 4,000 that I've manually put in there, and that 4,000 would be for some sort of promotion maybe. Okay, so you can also have multiple forecast models that you actually want to run. So I may have a pessimistic or optimistic forecast model that I can actually run. And then I can compare over the models and decide which one to actually do. Now, the forecast itself is just a way of calculating the figures. MRP is where all the real work gets done. So once I'm happy with a forecast, and if I went into here, let's just go and change this to 3,000. Like, it's literally as easy as that to actually change the forecasts. And as you can see there, it's also reflected in the graph immediately. Now, if I was happy with this forecast now, what I can do is I can actually authorize that forecast. And up here, I've got authorize forecast by lines if I wanted to. I can also regenerate from here as well. And I can also change the forecast dimension. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to very quickly show you how we can change the forecast dimensions. I'm not interested in color, size, configuration or style for right now. And in fact, I'm not even interested in item number. Now, if I go and move these over here, what I'm going to see now is I'm now going to see a forecast based on the forecast allocation keys. Now, forecast allocation key is a way I can group forecast items together. And as you can see here, I've gone and split it now. And so no longer an item number. If I went to do an adjustment on this one here, it would adjust all my forecast allocation key RD, and any adjustments I do would roll up and down those forecast allocations. So it gives me the ability to take a family of products and adjust the whole forecast in one go. Okay, so once I'm happy with the forecast, I can then turn around and go into here, and this is how the forecast goes if I go and submit it. And if I go down the bottom here, just drop that down, give it some more room. This is the individual steps each forecast does. And as you can see, it grabs a whole lot of data from inside of D365, and then it shoves the whole lot out to machine learning, and that's where the bulk of the calculation is actually taken care of. So at this point here, it prepares the data, it puts it all in a staging table, passes it through to Azure Machine Learning, and then it will then return the different forecasts. And as you can see, the last time I ran it across multiple companies. So I can have the ability to run multiple companies at once. And this is because I'm doing a lot of intercompany on this particular company. So once I've gone and authorized it, it then goes into, and I'm going to pick that item we were looking at before, which is the RC2130. And when that is authorized, it will then load the standard D365 tables. So these tables here are the same ones that you would load manually if you were doing a manual load. All right, as you can see here, I can see my forecast going through, I can see my warehouse, and I can see my site. So I can have multiple sites, multiple warehouses, all being forecast at once. Now, once it's going to run, MRP would then go ahead and pick it up. So into the net requirements, and a forecast for 16, as you can see, demand forecast by buckets. And then what it does is it will create a planned transfer order, because there's no production done in 16, there's no production done in 17. And when I flick over to 17, I see exactly the same. And it's not till I hit 15, which is my production plant. And at this point here, I can now see I've got production orders going through. I've got these transfer requirements from the other two warehouse plus the demand forecast. In return, it will create a batch order. And if I keep on scrolling down, you're going to see that routine repeated multiple times. So this is our way of also handling the distribution planning. Now, in between those warehouses, there will possibly be transport time, which is all taken into account, and it will be the offset between the start and the requirement dates. So as you can see here, I've got two transfer requirements. One's on the 28th, one's on the 30th. That's because it's a different length of time actually taken to require to dispatch those to arrive on time. Okay, so up and go back out of there. Now, in the standard forecasting screen that we see here, we do have the ability, if for instance I wanted to take a group of forecast and for some reason I wanted to update them, I can also do that directly inside of D365 by this bulk update. So I could choose a product, I could choose an update, I could then select the model I actually wanted to update. And when I was talking about before, you could have multiple models here. So if I went into current forecast, I could then go down here and say, okay, what do I want to change? And I can either change the quantity, the sales price, based on the sales price, discount percentage, whatever I want onto there. And then what I can do is I can put a factor in there. So if I chose a date range and I put a factor in there of 1.1, it would immediately add 10% to the forecast horizon that I've actually selected. And that's all standard straight out the box. Okay, so from there, we can also have a supply forecast as well as a demand forecast. So the difference between the demand forecast is sales driven, a supply forecast is purchase driven. So a good example of that is that we've got a number of customers that have to forecast both ends. Dairy products are a classic example. So if you have a milk product, you would do two forecasts. You do a forecast for your end product, what you want to make. You'd also do a supply forecast based on what you know you're going to get out of the farms. And the art here is then to balance the two forecasts. So if I haven't got enough milk supply to do the end items, I then would adjust the top end item. If I've got my top end items and I can actually get milk from somewhere else, I will adjust the bottom end items. And that way there, effectively, you're not setting yourself up to fail to begin with. Okay, so from that forecast, you can also then see your forecast output. So if I just quickly flick over to master planning again, and in here, a very quick way of actually seeing the forecast inside the system is to use this little known screen called item requirement statistics. So from here, I could actually then say, okay, show me item numbers, show me vendors. And based on the forecast that I've gone and run, I could now turn around and say, okay, then give me the forecast values for a particular vendor. So if I went and chose, here we go, CN001 as my vendor, I can choose my vendor account. And from here, I can now see on the side here, my requirements. Now, at the moment, this is my total requirements. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a quick change on the display. Okay, we're not going to worry about size configuration and color or even site. We're going to go purely just for warehouse, and we're not interested in batch number either. Okay, so that gives me a nice compact view. Now at this point here, I can then also change it. Okay, I want to see my forecast by quarters. I can also see it by weeks or months. So that way there, it gives me a very accurate forecast to actually fire off to a supplier. That way they're actually working on exactly the same forecast we are. And if you wanted to send it off to a vendor, you would just literally export it to Excel. And open up the file. There it is, pre-filtered, already sitting there. And at that point there, you can just go file and send. Off you go. Okay, so it's very flexible on what we can actually do here. We could use vendor accounts or vendor groups. We can also choose item numbers or item groups. There's also the ability to actually see it in a dollar value as well. Now I've got none of my, there we go, plan cost calculation. And that way there, it also gives you a bit of a cash flow forecast on where you're actually going to head based on your forecast as well. So as you can see, I'm now displaying this in a dollar value per week. Like I said, if I change it over to per month, I'll now see the dollar value per month for this particular vendor for these particular items. Okay. So that's the overview of the forecasting. So what I'm going to switch to now is I'm now going to flick over to a customer service. Okay, so customer service is a it's part of the retail module, but a lot of people don't realize that they can actually use it anyway. So if I go into there and I just open up the modules and I zap down to here, and it's a great replacement for all the customers that aren't currently running a CRM. Because what it does is it will actually give you an overview of the customer, and without having to set up all the retail stuff that goes along with it, you can actually just use customer service straight out the box. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my favorites. I'm going to open up customer service, saved it as a favorite. There it is there. And then I'm going to enter in the customer that I'm interested in. So this time it will be US-104. I go search. Oh, didn't do that very well, did I? So let's get out of there and just double check that number. Okay. So you still enter your sales orders as if you would normally. There we go, US 004. Okay, I'll see. And the nice advantage of using this particular screen, and if you're running D365, you can actually flick over to this and use it straight away. Anyway, okay. Dash. There we go. Find the customer I want to view. Select. And what this does is it then brings up this view of the customer. And what I can see here is I've got the customer information in the top section here. So I know who I'm talking to, phone numbers. Down the side here, I can actually see their order history, sales statistics, how often they buy. If there's any related invoices or charges, anything like that, it all shows on the side there. I've also got notes. So this particular customer, for instance, is changing addresses on the 21st of April. So I can put that on there. So the moment I'm talking to the customer, I've immediately got their information in front of me. Down the bottom here, I can now see all the sales orders that they've placed, all the return orders. Now, if you aren't using channels, it will actually display all channels for you as you look at this as well. And so I go and scroll down, I go and pick a sales order, go and pick an invoice one. Down here, I can actually see that it's an invoice returned order. I don't want to see an invoice return order. I want to see an invoice sales order. So there we go. So there's my invoice sales order. I'm down the bottom here. I can immediately see all the lines without having to click into different orders. So it's very quick. If there was any events that related to this, the order events would also show up down the bottom here. Now, from here, once I've got into the order that I'm interested in seeing, across the top here, I've got a whole lot of added information. So if I want to see the order history, I can immediately click on to the order history, and it will now show me the actual historical data, when it was entered, who entered it, and so on. If I just go back there. Right, another thing is detailed status. Okay, I want to know, when was it shipped? So from here, I can actually see the different products that have been shipped, and as you can see, I can see there are multiple sites that are also shipped as well. And if I scroll down here, I've got all my line details. Now this is all done from a single screen, opposed to you having to click through your current sales orders. Now there's also tracking details. I go to tracking details. I can see this one was actually done in 2 deliveries, and if I was using order tracking, which I'm not on this one here, it would also bring up my carrier, my tracking numbers, and so on. All the lines that were delivered. So let's see, it went out from site 1, and if we go to this one over here, and we go to the lines, we'll see that this one here went out from site 2. So we actually split the delivery between the 2 sites on this one, and we sent it out independently. So there's definitely advantages by using the screen here as a CRM, and especially the notes field. So if I wanted to add some new notes on there, literally I could just go into customer up the top here and go notes and just add more notes straight away. Okay, so that's where the notes came from. Or if you wanted to add pictures or text data, anything like that, it all just sits there. Okay. So that's the brief overview of the customer service and the forecasting. What we're going to lead into now is we're now going to go to make to order products, and I'm going to flick over to Janine at this point, and she's going to run you through the product configurator. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so good morning, everyone. So this one's I'm going to discuss about what we call a product configurator, which is available out of the box within D365. So this is purely things where it's configured to order, or as what Paul mentioned, like a made to order type of scenario. So just to run through a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is just to give you a flavor of what is available out of the box within our product configurator. So if I just go to our product configuration model, so just an example on here. So what we call a product configurator, where we usually use this is, for example, if there are for example, car audio system that you can use, and customers can select different type of car audio system or car audio parts. So that's where product configurator comes in. So just in this demo that we're gonna have, so I'm just gonna show what what we call a rotary bottle fill. So it's more like a machine where you can select different parts or different machineries that can attach on that specific product. So if I just go to here, drill down to that product configurator. So each of those product configurator, so if it opens, okay, so on here, as you can see on this screen, so there's that functionality within D365 on what we call attributes. So what is attributes? Attributes is the components itself. So what are the users can select in terms of our products. So in this case, if we look at the attributes, so some of the things that we put in here is that they can select the country in terms of what country will use this specific machine in this case. So if I go to that country, you can put what we call description. So description later on when we go to a sales order it's like a help text. So it's like a help text for the user or for the customer to be able to put information in. Okay, so if I look at that attribute type at the moment, so if I go to the country, so this is my attribute. So these are what are the things that they can select. So in this case, I have 3 values, which is New Zealand, Australia, and USA. Okay. So in terms of attributes, you can have different type of attributes. In this case, it's a text and it's a fixed list text. Okay. You can also have what you call an attribute, which is a numeric type of attribute. So if I look at the third attribute that I have set up here, is that it's a decimal. So you need to specify what nozzle size it will be for this specific bottle fill. So if I go to that attribute, drill down to that attribute on here. So as you can see, I've used what we call a decimal place, and it's based on a range. Okay, so as you can see from here, and then the unit of measure. So you can also have what we call integers as well in terms of attributes. So if I go further down the list, okay, so in terms of the number of tanks on here, so if I click on this attribute, so I have put some integer values, and it's a fixed list of what they can select in terms of the number of tanks for this specific component. Okay. So another thing that you can also do within the product configurator is, as you can see from here, you can also set default values. So for here, like for the nozzle type, I put a default value in. So what will happen later on when we go to that configurator is that this field is pre-populated by this value. Okay. Another thing that we can also set within product configurator is you can also put some smarts in terms of the configurator. So one of the example here is on this specific component. So if I just scroll a little bit down, there's what we call modifiers. Okay, so on this modifier, I can put some conditions in when that field can be available. Okay, so for example, for this overflow catcher, so what happens here is that I'm gonna make it hidden. Okay, it's gonna be hidden if the previous component of overflow plus is set to no. Okay, so you can put some smarts in terms of when this field will be hidden. There can be some conditions. There also can be conditions in terms of when can it be mandatory. Okay, so you can also say it can be mandatory, and you can set some conditions in. Okay, if I go to the second component here, so I have again a modifier in terms of this field. Okay, this field will be hidden if the setting for that overflow plus is no. Okay, and if the condition where it's a rust resistance, then it's going to be a read only. So you can put more conditions in terms of that field or more rules within those fields. Okay. Another thing that we can also put in terms of product configurator is what we call constraints. Okay, so in terms of constraints is some conditions where you can put in terms of if a user select this value, it can default a certain value. Okay, so there's 2 types of constraints that you can set up within the product configurator. The first thing is what we call a table constraint. Okay. A table constraint is more of a user defined. Okay, so if I go to this tables constraint that I have set up on here, so if I go to table constraint, so I have defined a user defined list on here to say a combination of the country and electrical voltage. Okay, so what we're saying here is that if you select the country Australia, by default, the electrical voltage will have a default value, which is 220 volts. It's the same for New Zealand, and then it's going to have a different condition again for USA. Okay? So that's what we call a table constraint. Okay? Another thing that you can set up is what we call an expression constraint. Okay? So if I close some of the screen, so an expression constraint is like a condition where if a certain user selects a value, then it restricts them from or it excludes a certain value within the system. Okay, so one of the example we put in here is what we call, I put an expression constraint here to say if the nozzle type selected is rust resistant, for example, okay, I will limit the number of tanks that it can select. Okay, so when we go, so on here, I'm saying they don't have an option, or a user won't have an option to select number of tanks with one number of tank only. Okay? So that's what we call an expression constraint. So you can have both. Okay? And as you can see in that expressions constraint, so there are certain conditions that you can put in or certain criteria that you can put in. Okay? Another thing as well available within the product configurator is what we call calculations. Okay, so you can put some smart calculations within the product configurator. So in this scenario, so what I'm putting in here is that if you select a nozzle, okay, depending on the number of nozzles, it will require you to have two of this product, okay, which is a hose that we attach on the nozzle. Okay, so we can put conditions in by depending on the number of nozzles that they have put in, then it will automatically calculate that it will multiply that by 2 to select that specific item, which is our hose, our nozzle hose, which will be required as part of the bills of material. Okay, so we're going to show that here later on when we go to that order. Okay? So another thing as well that you can put in on the product configurator is this is what we call a user requirement. So what's a user requirement? It's like a sub component of that specific product configurator. Okay, so if I could just scroll further down, okay, so I have what we call a user requirement. Okay, so on here, what I'm saying here is that if the nozzle type is not equal to this specific value, then it will show this subcomponent or subassembly that it can be selected by the customer. Okay, so if I go to that scale, for example, it will also have its own attributes. It will also have its own components. Okay, so if I click on scale, so as you can see from here, I have another set of attributes referring to this specific user component. Okay, so that means it's another selection that the user can select as part of that product configurator. Okay. So just going back to that to the top level. Okay, so if I just scroll further down, so as we go further down, there's the BOM lines. Okay, so so when a product configurator is selected or created, it automatically creates a unique bills of material in D365. It also creates a unique routing within D365. Okay, so one of the powerful things within product configurator is it can also affect how it builds that bills of material in the system. So one of the example here is that we mentioned depending on the number of nozzles that you select, it will multiply the hose twice, which affects our bills of material. So if I drill down on here, if I go to that BOM line details, okay, so it can be based on value. When you say value, whatever you have set here, that's the one that will be created on the bills of material. You can also have an option where you can select attribute. So if I go to the setup here, so there's an option here saying that the quantity will be affected based on the attribute that we have set, okay? Based on the calculation that we have set within the product configurator. So you can do that on the bills of materials. You can also do that on the routing, because for example, on the routing, depending on the number of nozzles that you select, or for example, depending on the number of, or the type of nozzle or the type of overflow that you're going to select, it affects the runtime. So you can also do that on the routing. So if I go to the route operation details on here, so you also have that option. So if I go to the times where you can set setup time and runtime. So on here, I made it simple and say it's based on value, but you can also have that option to say it's based on attribute. So it's based on a certain calculation that can affect a setup time or runtime within routings. Okay. So if I cancel here, so another thing that you can also have within product configurator is what we call price models. Okay. So depending on the selection of the attributes or the components, it may affect the costings or the price for that product configurator. So if I go to this price model at the moment, okay, and select edit on here. Okay, so if we have a look at this specific price model for this product configurator, so what I have set here is it's based on that currency. So at the moment, the default currency for this demo data that I have is Euro, but you can have a different currency as well. Okay, so on here, what I have set up is that the base price for this product configurator is 3,500 euro. Okay, and then depending on the component that you select on the product configurator, it will add certain value. So for example, for the nozzle type, if the nozzle type you selected is standard, it will add 1,000. It will add 1,000 from that base price that we have. Okay, so you can also put some expressions in terms of how it will calculate or how it will add some price within the product configurator. So for example, on here, I have put in here a simple calculation on depending on the number of nozzles times that by itself. So a power of 2, that will be the pricing that will add in terms of this product configurator. Okay, so you can have either a simple plus and then the value, or it can be a calculation as well. Now, if I close this, also within product configurator, you can also set up what you call templates, okay, which is configuration templates. So for example, depending on the selection that they have. So for example, if you're ordering it's a requirement for NZ, you can put some certain values already there available or certain fields populated within the product configurator. So if I click on here for NZ, so I put some default values. So if you select that country NZ, so let's just give this time to update. Okay, so it will show you, it will have default values in here. So it has a default value for the country and for some of the other fields. Okay, so you can create what you call templates as well. So if I cancel here. So, and one last thing that I want to highlight in terms of the configurator is what we call a configuration nomenclature. So a configuration nomenclature, so what happens within the system is depending on your selection, it will create what we call a configuration. So a new variant of that specific item. Okay, so that configuration, it can be just a number sequence that it will create, or it can be smart enough to create that based on the selection that you have put in on the component. So if I click on here on edit nomenclature, so what we did here is set up a simple nomenclature. So what happens here is depending on the country that you select and depending on the nozzle type that you select, that will be the configuration ID. Okay, so this is an example of that configuration ID. So it can be a representation of depending on the component that you select, or it will just be an automatic numbering. Okay. So once we have set that up, so you also have that option to have different versions if you need to. So for example, this configurator will only be applicable for certain periods. So you can put that in, and it needs to be approved and activated before you can use it. Okay. So once we've done the configurator, I'll just quickly go to a sales order and create a sales order and see how it will look like. Okay, so if I go to sales and marketing now, and then all sales orders. So I'll just quickly create a new sales order on here. So I'll just select my customer, which is just a default customer that we have here. And then I'm just gonna put a warehouse in and just click on OK. And once that sales order is created, then I'm just gonna put in our item in this case. So I'll just quickly add the line. So our item number, okay, which is our rotary bottle fill machine in this case. So by default, if I select that item, okay, the configuration, it will default that to a value, a default value. Okay, so I'm just going to click on enter. So as you can see, that's the item. And at the moment, it's looking at the configuration default. Now, if I go to product and supply, and then I'm just going to go to configure lines to trigger that screen for the product configurator. So if I click configure line, so it will pop up a separate form where you can fill in those information. So here is the product configurator. So as you can see, that's where our attributes that we have set up. So as we said, you can use what you call a template. So if you click on load template, it will show you the template that you have created. You can just simply select one and it will populate those fields. Okay. So another thing as well in here is based on that configuration we have set. So there are some things that we have put in as a default. So that's why it's defaulting that on here. So now if I select the country, so we said we have a constraint that we have set up that if you select a certain country, it will automatically populate the electric voltage. Okay? So that's where we put in those information. And as you can see from here, the price is also showing on the configurator. So it has converted that to USD because my customer is currently in USD. So from Euro to USD, it converts that. Okay? So I can put certain information on here. So some of the things that we have set is that if I select it's a rust resistant type of nozzle, so we said it will automatically show you a subcomponent of that specific. So it's a subcomponent that you need to select as part of that configuration. Okay. Other smarts that we put in here, so I need to put the number of tanks as well. So as we also said, we have built a constraint to say that if it's a rust resistant, then you don't have an option to select this. Okay. So you should be selecting a different one in itself. So I can say I'm selecting number of tanks as 3, and then I can also select the other information on here. So I'm just gonna select, yep, I need an overflow. Okay. And if I set that to yes, so there are some fields that will be showing as well. So remember, if I set that to no, there will be some fields that are hidden. So we put some smarts within configurator to do that. Okay. So I'm just going to put in yes on here and just quickly select other options. Okay. So I'm also going to say number of nozzles will be 10. Okay. And then if I click on next, it goes to that sub part of that configurator. and I'm just going to say none. Okay. And then from here, you can generate what we call a price breakdown. So if I select that view price breakdown, so it generates an Excel sheet, okay, which shows you the price breakdown based on those configurations that you have set. So if you look at this Excel sheet, it shows us the customer and then the sales order number. Okay, it shows us the item that we're trying to create as a sales order, and then it shows you those breakdowns. Okay. So it shows you that sales price breakdown, and once you're happy, okay, you just click on OK, and that will create that as a sales line, and it will also attach those information as a note. Okay, so if I click on OK here, so as also you can see the price has been changed based on the setting that we have created. Okay. So let's just wait for a few minutes to have that setting. Okay. And also while it's also doing this, so it's also creating a unique bills of material and a unique route based on those configurations or based on those settings that we have put in. Okay. So we'll just wait for a few minutes for this to run. I'll just refresh my screen at the moment. And then I'll just show you one that has been created. Okay, so let me just go back to that sales order, and hopefully that has created based on the setting that we have selected. Okay, so if I expand the line details on here, and then if I just go to the product, okay, so it created the bills of material on here. So if I quickly select that bills of material, just to show you the calculation where we have set. So here is the nozzle cap, and we said depending on the number of nozzles that we have selected, we said the number of nozzle holes will be multiplied by 2. So that's why it created that as 20. So you need 20 nozzle holes for that. Okay. It also created its unique route. If you have a look at here, so it created that unique route where we have set there's a setup time and also runtime within that sub route. Okay, so if I quickly show you, if I go to the route detail, so there's that assembly, and if I click on times, then that's where the setup and runtime. Okay. And then those information, that breakdown is also available on the notes. So as you can see here, it's part of that attachment. So you should also be able to see that from here. So if I click on that attachment, that clip on the sales order, so it will show you a note, okay, which is the selection that you have put in on the configurator, and also that breakdown, that Excel sheet that we have shown you previously. So you can also see it from here or open it from here. So that's the auto-generated Excel file. Yep, and shows you that. Okay, so that's a quick overview of Product Configurator. So now I'm going to pass the presentation to Tom.
Thanks, Janine. That was excellent. Thanks very much. I'm just going to share my screen. So good morning, everybody. I'm going to do a overview on advanced warehouse and manufacturing. I've got a small slide presentation I'm going to go through first, and then after that we're going to go into do a live demo. So this is we're just going to cover off a few things. So advanced warehousing from a manufacturing point of view is picking raw materials to fulfill a production order in the system. So that's what we're going to run through today. So where we basically sell a product, it's created demand through planning, and then we reserve our raw material, we pick it, we process it, and then we report as finished. So this process that we're going to go through now is just showing that. Some of the things that we can do is obviously we can do when we do our planned production orders, we can also set up what we call time fences so that we don't actually have to pick all of our raw materials straight away, that we can pick it when it's required for the manufacturing process. So based on the route and the process of what we're creating, it will tell us, we can tell it to go and release and create work to go and pick the material for that manufacturing at a later stage when it gets to that point of the manufacturing process. So that's what we're going to, we won't actually be demonstrating that today, but based on the route, we can set up time fences so that we're not picking all the materials all at once. I'm going to show you the mobile device. Now we actually have two versions of the mobile device now. We have the new version that's just been released, which is the bottom screen here, and we still have the older version as well. So the new version is very good, very user friendly. So we're going to demonstrate the new version today. We're going to show how we can start a production order on the mobile device, and once we've started the production order, how we can then report as finish. I'm going to show you, we're going to create SEC labels for the production process. So SEC makes it compliant with the warehouse, the big supermarkets for manufacturing. So when we ship our goods out, they have an SEC label built into them. So we're going to actually show you how that produces a label and create put away work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into my system. And so here we can see my system, and I'm going to go down to our production control, all production orders. Okay, and here we can see this production order here. It's at a created status. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to release this production order. And as part of the release process, I've set this system up to create work, and it's doing it via a batch. So what it does is it releases a production order. The batch comes along and picks up the production order and says, rightio, what material do we need? And then it's going to create work based on the requirement. Now, I've also set this up so that it splits the work into different types of work. So for instance, if you're picking a bag or you're picking a drum or bulk pick, it's going to break the work up into different pick work. Now we can configure this to pretty much do anything you want, is for how it creates work and how it segregates the work up. So the system's a little bit slow just at the moment. So we're just waiting for it to create this work in the background. While it's doing that, I'm just going to go to our production orders again on another screen. So you can see here it's gone to an estimated status. So it is actually processing through the stages. So we'll just release that again. So I have one underneath here, which I've done earlier. And what we'll do is we'll actually just switch to the creation of finish goods. So I'm going to log into my mobile device here. Okay. This is the new Microsoft mobile device. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go in to that mobile device and I'm going to do a report as finish. And I'm going to come back to the work creation process. So I put in my production order that I've actually started already. And as it comes up. Okay, so here it is here. I'm going to report as finish 1 unit. The system has decided to go slow. Okay, so here now it's created my SCC number, and which was also my license plate within the system, but it's created my number, and I'm doing 1 unit each, and I'm just going to report as finished. So while it's doing that, we'll just go back and just see that the just bring that back up into the screen. So unfortunately, the system has just decided to go very, very slow, which is our demo system. And here we go. So my other side has just decided to finish. So it's released the production order to go and create the work. While we're waiting for that to do this, I'll show here. So you can see here that it's released it. There's my release details. And what will happen in the background now is a wave will create the work. And once the work is created, under the warehouse, under the work details, we'll actually see the work that's been created, which it hasn't done yet. So we'll go back to our okay, so this has now completed the work, and you'll see that it just produced a SCC label that can now be attached to the finished product. So you can see that there. So what I'm just going to do, just go to the back here and refresh my screen. And we'll see that our wave has actually run. So now if I go into my work details, I can see here that I've now got all my work that got created for that production order. And I've split the work up into drum pick, bag work, and I've individual bags. So this piece of work here says go to this location and pick 10 bags and then print a label because it's now going to put a new license plate on it and then shift it to the staging location. So on the mobile device, how that will be presented, and we'll just get out of this now because we've produced our product. If I go into my bag work, I will see my work here. And if I look, I will see my production order. There's my production order that I'm working on. And if I click on that item, it's my bag of sugar that I've got to go and pick. So now what's going to happen is it's going to ask me to go and pick that bag of sugar. And while it's doing that, I'm just going to go and grab the bag of sugar. And what I'm going to do is to pick it, I'm actually going to go and get the SEC number or the license plate to pick that goods. So if I put in the SEC number, that's the one that I've just scanned on the mobile device. Okay, so that one there I cannot pick. Okay, and so normally I would pick that, and then once I've picked it, it will then allow me to complete the work. But due to the system going slow, we're just having a couple of technical problems with that. So what I'm actually going to do now, though, is I'm going to start this production order from the mobile device. So I put in my production order. Okay, so here's my production order. That's what I'm going to start. And now that production order is started. So if I go back to the production order in my menu here, you'll see that it is now at a starter status. And you can see here, if I go into my work, you'll see that there's my work. I still haven't picked it, but there's my work that I've started. So we'll just go. So we'll just go and pick. I'm just going to pick this piece of work. Okay, so that's allowed me to pick it, and it's created a target license plate, and my quantity that I'm picking is 150 kilos. And there it is there. So now it's saying to me to put it into a new location, into stage 1. And there's my license plate that it created, that it's going to store this quantity on until it's actually consumed in the production order. So I go, yes, I'm going to put it there. And that work is now complete. And if I go back to my screen here and refresh my screen, it will show that it's now put at the stage setting, and it's there ready to be moved from the staging location into the final resource, being this resource location, to be consumed in the production order. And that's pretty much raw material picking. I'm now going to hand you over to Charlie, who's going to take you through Power BI. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good to be with you this afternoon. Let me just get my screen up. All right, so I'll be taking you through some of the Power BI this afternoon. Just give me 1 second. I'll put my camera off now. All right, Tom, can you just let me know whether you can see my screen, the presentation?
I've just got the Teams one up at the moment there, mate. It's just lost the present.
1 second.
That's perfect, man.
I'm just going to stop sharing, present, and then share. Apologies, folks. My PC is not playing nicely with me this afternoon. All right, Gareth, can you let me know whether you can see the presentation now?
That is good to go, buddy.
Good stuff. All right, so folks, my presentation won't necessarily focus on very specific manufacturing based reports. I'm going to be talking high level to you about Power BI and how we use that within the D365 environment.
Actually, sorry, Charlie, mate. I've just got the other screen. Are you able to try the full presentation? This is one where we can see notes and all that.
I see.
Thanks, bud.
Of course, this would happen to me, the last presenter. I apologize.
No worries, mate.
Folks, you'd be happy to know that we did test this prior to this session and it worked 100%. But there's this beautiful thing called Murphy's Law that has been around since my grandparents' days. Very much active to this day. Let's try this again. Present, play.
It's looking good, Charlie.
Let's see if I put it on the screen, what happens. Still not.
Might just have to use non-presenter mode if you can just scroll through it there, man.
Right, bear with me, something's happening. Let's try this one more time. Can you see the main presentation now?
That is looking good, buddy.
Thank you. I apologize, everyone. From time to time, this does happen. Okay, so as I said, I'm not going to go into great amounts of detail in very specific manufacturing type reporting. It's just more focused around the benefits of using Power BI within the D365 environment, although some of the examples I will be looking at in the use cases will focus on production and manufacturing as much as I can possibly do today. All right, so the ways of reporting in F&O, D365 F&O, especially when you're working on the manufacturing and production side, irrespective of whether you're doing finance, whether you're doing that, just to summarize this for you, there are some standard reports available that have been pre-built. They don't always cater for all the user requirements and business requirements, but you know they're pretty good. They do answer a lot of questions that you might have. Alternatively, you know, we have got some advanced reporting in Power BI, which is also coming from some out-of-the-box solutions Microsoft have made available, or some of the custom ones that Fusion 5 have built. So in D365, you know, there are some pretty limited embedded reports. You might have seen them. That's typically when you have a little pie chart or a bar graph giving you some data and analytics. Otherwise, there are also heaps of SSRS paginated reports, list views, as we call them. There's also some custom developed ones that you can do within D365, which sits outside of Power BI. But again, it gets a little bit complex when you're trying to develop custom reports in D365. Usually the users will just end up putting a list view or a query together, which is just a table view in the system. So with Power BI, I'm going to show you what standard content packs are available, and I'll point out which ones you could be using for manufacturing and production. And then I'll also show you some of the pre-built solutions that we've done. So on the previous slide, I said you can have reports in D365 F&O, or you could have them in Power BI. So I just want to be a honest and good consultant here and just tell you that obviously you're not limited to reporting on Power BI. Although, you know, when you're speaking to me, I'm going to represent and I'm going to tell you that Power BI is the way to go. With this slide that I've got up here now, I'm basically putting in one picture for you why you should consider using Power BI, and that is because it has been rated by Gartner as the best analytical tool in the world globally for the last 5-6 years running. Okay, so I've only put the last 5 years up here, but they are the front runner, and you know, not only are they the best, not only is Power BI the best analytical tool globally right now, but it's also the cheapest one to use right now. So it's a no-brainer, folks. I've heard a lot of Australian people use that term. It's a no-brainer, so I've kind of adopted that now. So with the standard content packs that Microsoft have made available, so this isn't, again, specific to manufacturing and production, but this is everything that we've got available for F&O if you are using these modules. So actual versus budget, you know, that's always great. You know, at the end of the day, manufacturing and production is all about, you know, selling and delivering products to your customers to make money. That's why we're in business, right? There's cash overview, compensation, benefits. I think more specific for manufacturing, we usually use the production performance, purchase spend analysis further down. We use warehouse performance, second last one, workforce metrics. You also want to make sure that you've got the right people to be able to build whatever needs to be built on your side in terms of your products. So in total, we have 17 reports that can be switched on quite quickly, totaling 95 pages estimated with about 288 visuals. So, you know, what I always mention to the customers here is give these a go, activate them, run them, identify the gaps, and then if there are gaps that need to be filled, then we enhance the existing ones. We don't by any means need to start from scratch ever. And you know, personally, me, if I was speaking to someone, that's what I'd want to hear, because you know, more time is more money and more stress and admin, and I don't like that. Here's an example of what some of the paginated standard reports look like in F&O. So this again, this is rental details. It's just the first one I could grab off the web, but it's just to show you it's basically just a paginated report. It's just a typical list view, nothing pretty or sexy about it, no logos, it's just raw. So it's really more for exporting and ticking off paper-based. I'm a fan of this for financial reporting, but for everything else, I do believe that we can go a little bit more visual. This is what an example is of one of the Power BI reports. Now you can see on the screen that on the top left corner, it's got finance and operations listed in the corner, top left corner there, which shows you that this is a standard report that's embedded or launched from D365. This is typically what it'll look like when you activate the standard content packs. We'll also be able to tell you where to find these. They basically sit under different workspaces within F&O. So some use cases, you know, guys, I always start off with sales. Like I said, I know we're talking about manufacturing and production here, but we're all in business for making money, right? That pays the salaries and feeds the tummies. So with sales, you know, the typical things that we look at there is just your revenue actuals versus targets and forecast, you know, and how does it compare to previous periods. We'd also like to see our costs. Importantly, the combination of the two will obviously tell us and our shareholders how profitable we are, and if we're tracking, if we're on track. The third bullet point, very important for me, you know, now we start getting into sales, but more from a production manufacturing point of view. Is do we have sufficient supply to keep up with the demand of the customers? And if we don't, then why not? So there we need to start looking at things. Now we jump from sales into things like supplier analysis and that sort of thing. So are our suppliers not performing as expected? Are things not being delivered to us on time or in the right quantity or of the right quality? Because that's going to affect your production. Or do we have internal issues that exist? You know, what I usually find is the approvals get held up. I've actually written several reports where I've shown people how customer orders come in and stock needs to be ordered to produce certain goods for these customers. But someone is always on leave. I always joke about this, but it's a serious matter. Someone's always on leave, and it always happens to be one of the approvers. So, you know, we write reports as basic as just showing what is the average time to approve purchase orders before they get sent off to the vendors. And, you know, we can call these people out by name. Not that we want to shame anyone, but, you know, that's where we need to start identifying where the holdups are in the process. We also want to look at things, last bullet point, amount of sales orders that have been converted to production orders and invoices. So sometimes there's things that happen in between there that the sales orders came in, but we haven't converted them to production orders yet. And even if we have, they haven't been invoiced yet. If we don't invoice, we don't get paid. If we don't get paid, we don't got cash flow. So it's a vicious cycle, folks. A lot of things to consider. It's not really, in the world of BI, it will never just be about manufacturing. That's very operational level. But if you're looking at it from a tactical and strategical point of view, you need to look higher and how the whole process fits together. Some specifics to manufacturing, yeah, other things that that we have built reports for when we engage with our customers in this area. It's just the 4 main points that I've listed here. That it's not limited to this, but these are the main ones we focus on. So it's production and operational efficiency. There we look at things like production orders status and performance. So we can we have some reports available where we can show you how many production orders you have, how many of them came from plans, and so on. How many of them, what statuses are they sitting in? How many of them have been released? How many of them have been completed, in review, etc. We also want to monitor quality. You know, it's no good producing something if you, or putting something together if it's not going to be of good quality. We also want to measure that against legislation standards, etc. We want to look at machine utilization and effectiveness. That's also good. A lot of the reports we've done is looking at the downtime. So if a machine goes down, what's that going to cost you? How's it going to impact the business? There's supply chain and risk management. So there's supply performance that I spoke about earlier under that, and lead time reduction. So there's some good analytics to help you with that. Demand planning and forecasting. I know Paul showed you some really cool stuff over there. So even with the outputs of what you're getting from master planning and forecasting and all that, we can actually consume the outputs of that and visualize it for you in Power BI. Or alternatively, we could also use some of the AI features to do similar work and produce outputs and do the visualizations, both in Power BI. Important bits there for me is capacity planning, so making sure you got the right people, so on, and the right quantities available. Cost and overhead analysis. So I mentioned this earlier as well. We don't just want to look at our revenue, but we want to look at our costs and what's consuming the biggest piece of the pie of our profits. And then there's also floor activities and cost tracking. So I just bullet pointed these just to put them up as a discussion point and maybe just to get the thinking going. All right, so how's Power BI going to help you with this? All right, so the reason BI is in existence, folks, is because you need effective reporting for measuring performance and standards and for making effective decisions. That's really, if I have to summarize BI in one sentence, that's it there, the first bullet point. Power BI is also fantastic on mobile views. So I know every application, even D365, might have mobile views, but it's an analytical tool. So the joy there is that we can take big numbers and compress them to give you summarized data very quickly. So BI isn't just about how data is represented, but the performance in the back end is also a lot more responsive. It's built to crunch big numbers and give you output faster. And I think we sometimes miss that with BI. We just look at the application, how we log on and what it costs in terms of license, but we forget about the speed and the performance of the tool. There's also good integration with Powerapps, folks. So, gone are the days where we just gave you read-only data. I've given you beautiful visuals and data that makes sense. Now what? You just look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. Or do you want to do something about the data? Do you want to write data back to your database? So add in some decrease parameters or increase parameters and save it back, etc. Do you want to capture new data and add that to your existing BI data? It's sort of Microsoft solution. Well, it is Microsoft solution as part of the Power Platform. So the one is for read and the other one's for write, and they combine beautifully. So speak to me if you'd like to see a demo of that. Something that we do quite intensively is add commentary to Power BI reports. So you might need someone to add in a detailed comment about something that's happened. Even if you're in the warehouse and there's been an injury, you'd like to report it without having to jump off of Power BI and phone someone or log into a different application. You want to be able to enter a comment and store the date entered, the person who entered it, and save that. There is standard commentary built into Power BI as an example, but it doesn't store it as a snapshot for history reporting. There's easy collaboration, securing and sharing of content with the Power BI reports. So that's for internal and external users. So speak to us as well if you need to share any of your data with external stakeholders. And then this is the beautiful part for me is the AI features that have been built in, folks. One thing Microsoft did well, I come from a world I've worked with all the analytical tools out there in the market, Click, Tableau, SAP predominantly and all that. And one thing I noticed with a lot of them is every time they add AI features or advanced functions to make the tool better, the license fees somehow just seem to go up and up and up and up, and customers can't keep up. Microsoft are adding more features, AI features, along with other ones on a monthly basis, and the license fees don't go up for that. Now, I can't promise it'll always stay that way. At some point, everything does go up, but they're not deliberately penalizing the customer in terms of the license fees to introduce those features. So it's just getting better and better, but the AI features are fantastic. It's all right-click functions, codeless, very effective. But what I personally use this for and what I demonstrate to the customers is there's 4 types of analytics: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And we often just tap into the first one, which is descriptive. That's just really what happened. But we need to start making use of these features, AI features, to look at why something happened, and also to tell you what is likely to happen in the future, and also how to achieve or avoid certain outcomes. So I can do a detailed demonstration for you on that if you'd like. Just reach out to me. But all I'm trying to point out here is I just don't want to look at what happened. Some of the AI features, it's just key influences, explaining increases and decreases in the data set, explaining distribution. There's some Q&A features, which is really cool. You can literally type in a question and say, what is my output in this warehouse for February 2021? And it will give you a breakdown by just entering a question. And the results it gives back, you can pin back to your reports as well. Some of the more advanced AI features like machine learning. We've got the Azure Cognitive Services, so standard ones: detect language, extract key phrases, score sentiment, and tagging of images. The AutoML, automated machine learning, for me is fantastic. I use the 3 models there. We've done quite a bit of work there. Binary predictions, obviously that's just outputting a yes or no, true or false. The classification models would be a little bit more detailed, so not just a 1 or 2 yes or no output, but it'll be like a low risk, medium risk, high risk, and very high risk. So there's 4 types of outputs that you can have. And then regression models. That's when you're looking at things like, what is my revenue likely to be for the next 6 months, my forecast, or I've invoiced $1 million. What's my cash flow going to look like within 30 days, so I know how much money I'm going to have in the bank? That's when you want to start looking at values. I think this is my last slide that I'll just talk around before I get into the examples, but guys, also very, very cool mobile views. In the old days, you used to have to pay for a separate mobile license, and it was a separate developer tool. It was almost like having to build 2 separate reports. But nowadays, we can convert an existing report for you into a mobile view within a minute, and it's ready to consume as soon as it's been saved. So for those of you who use Apple Watches, you can keep score of all your key KPIs. You want to be alerted, when you have more than 2 cases that are urgent, that haven't been addressed, and so on. And in the mobile view, you can start looking at your analytics and so on. Right, so I'm going to just be taking you through very quickly, just visually, some examples. They might mean something to you, they might not, but it's really just to get the creative senses going, folks. So I'm just going to exit that. Let me just go over here again. And I want to go to my all right. Gareth, were you still good? You can still hear me? You can still see me?
All good, buddy.
All right. So I've just put a few tabs up on top, folks. This is just some of the standard content that we've developed. Now, they're not going to blow you away necessarily, because you might have other ideas of how they should be visualized, colors, etc. But please allow me just to show you what we are able to do. So also appreciate the fact that a lot of these things are already pre-built. So again, not having to start from scratch. So this is one Fusion 5 did for advanced warehousing. No, Tom did a demo on that just before I did. But over here, we can basically look at all the things coming inbound and going outbound in a warehouse, right? So yeah, we're looking at purchase orders in, which is blue, and transfers that are coming in. And we can slice that data by looking at the unit cost that is coming in. So yeah, we can see it's $381 average for purchase orders in that company. For this one, it's $211, and then $74 for transfers in. We can look at the average cost going out. We can look at document count in, lines receipted inwards quantity, so shipped lines, shipped document count, shipped quantity, shipped cost inward, etc. All these in Power BI you can see how responsive it is when I click. So sitting at the back of this, I think we've got over 1 million records. So it's just a sample set of data, but it is quite big. It's not like we're looking at 10 records. But from here, I can drill through with a simple click, and it'll give me the detailed view for that, and I can simply jump back. So you can see how responsive it is, and that's what I was saying as well. It's not necessarily about how pretty it looks, but also, you know, you want a performant tool. We've also got some picking visuals over here. We can look at the average picking times per line, the total lines picked, total orders picked, etc. And these also can be drilled into. What I want to show you here is also to do with your cost. We've combined some F&O data here, D365 F&O data with our payroll data, and I'm able to tell you things like what's your average cost per line picked in a warehouse. I can do it by company. I can also do it by worker. So yeah, you can start measuring people and saying, why are you costing me $31 an hour and John's costing 16? I know it's not a comfortable chat to have. Maybe some companies don't like doing that, but you know, to set standards, unfortunately, you have to measure and compare. So that's one report for advanced warehousing. Just following on that, here's a different way of how we can present it. You know, you're not limited to the white background and so on. You can make these things colorful and really up in your face. Over here, we've got a one-pager, but we're looking at purchases. Over here, we can look at how many POs we have. Again, I know this is more supply chain and all that, but it fits into the whole manufacturing process. It's just to say, you know, what stock do I have? What have I ordered? What am I waiting for, etc. So with purchases, you want to look at quantities, what's the value, etc. There's the top 10 items and just your purchase value over time. If we look at inventory, we can do these sort of visuals for you by material or by product category, etc. All the credits and debits, and show you your balance, quantity and value, because that sometimes you need the both. You need the quantity maybe for you know, production purposes, but the value you need to know for from a financial point of view, for your financial statements, etc. Another thing that we like doing here for the customers is also saying, you know, this is what you have on stock, so you can pretty much complete so many production orders with what you currently have, and looking at your sales, you kind of can expect you've only got enough stock to do 10 production orders, but on average you're doing 40 a month, so you're in trouble in this location or whatever. So these are very basic, but we can get a little bit more advanced. Then, you know, we tie that stock in with our sales. Just to show you, here's an example, remaining material metrics, the typical sales trends. I'm not going to go into too much details there. This one's quite nice here with arrivals, material arrivals. So basically what you've ordered, when you've ordered it, when it arrived. So then we can look at it delivery days. That's very important in the production cycle, you know, because if you held up, like I said, with delivery, that's a huge problem. Almost every single one of our customers have that problem, where if things don't come in on time, that delays you on the production side, which means your customers get annoyed or disappointed. Departures, we can also see how long things resided with you. This visual here seems to draw a lot of attention. This is very nice for warehouse people that need to pick the stock or do stock takes, etc., etc. It's just to illustrate to you how we can visually represent data. You know, if you're looking for a specific item like bamboo, I can click on it over here and I can visually show you with a layout that you provide to me. We can literally take one of your blueprints and we can draw a map over it and put it in Powerapps. It's not shape visuals. I'm trying to think what the correct name is. But anyway, we stick that image in here and we basically have your layout according to your design. It just visually makes it easier for you and your staff. So for this bamboo, I can see I've only got this in location GUT 930. All right, if I'm looking for a specific item, if I click over here, that will list all the items I've got. Now, I can also add extra columns to this visual and show you quantity, stock value, who the vendor is, etc., etc. So just to again ignite some of the visual senses. Another nice visual for you here, which just shows that it's not just limited to pie charts, bar charts, and table views, but something here, you know, we can also tell you a story. So we select a purchase order and saying PO took 66 days from order to build, ranking at 27th of the 43 completed POs. Average processing time for individual materials was 63 days. So yeah, we've got one PO and we had 13 lines. So there's 13, you'll see it's got the PO number, underscore, line number or item. I don't know what that represents necessarily, but yeah, it's showing you order to receive days. It's the lighter blue and the darker blue is receive to build. So we can see here automatically that, you know, there's a holdup in the delivery, but when it gets to on our side, it's quite good. So from the time we receive it, we can then produce whatever we need to for the production order and bill it to the customer. So you can, I know the production part's not included yet, it's just received and then probably goes out straight away, but you can put in your production process here as well. Visually at the bottom here, we can do little icons for you. You can see there's the orange cart is the ordered, received is the box with a tick, and then the invoice is the build date. So you can see each one of these are different items. So if I select an individual item, you can see that we have different ones. So already looking at this visual, there's a problem because I ordered, this is one purchase order I sent off to my vendor, and I had multiple deliveries. So the vendor, as much as I respect the fact that they might have come and delivered what they had available when they had it, it's still a problem for me because I'm expecting everything to come once off. And when it gets there, everything should be correct in terms of quality and quantity. I don't have time to adjust delivery notes and all these sort of things, right? You can also measure them. Yeah, you can, on the right hand side, you can see I ordered 1505, I got 1538. So I can set tolerance levels up here. So if I put 0%, obviously, boop, it was down, etc. So I don't necessarily know what each and every single one of these visuals mean, but it's just to, again, just give you some ideas. Also in the production cycle here, when you're looking at suppliers or downtime on anything, really machinery or suppliers not performing properly, if I had to say my downtime cost per hour would be something like $22, I hit enter. Over time, it would tell me, well, that's 4.747K. And this graph over here is really just a time graph. It doesn't show the date on the x-axis, but it's really going from 1 Jan 2018 to the 31st of December 2019. So this is a 2-year line graph, which is just showing you what the impact would have been if you had downtime cost of if your downtime cost per hour was $22. How that's made up, it'll show you here for by vendor and plants your total defects. So those are the recorded defects. Those are your downtime hours. And then that's the value. And on the other side, you have the vendor material combination. So both the same output, 4.7 mil on that side, 4.7 mil, but this one's just doing it by vendor plant. This one's doing it by vendor material type. So that is me with my 10-minute limit. I think I've probably gone a little bit over. I spent more than half the time trying to share my screen, but that's really it from the examples that I had to show, and I hope that you will find that useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. That was great. So I can definitely appreciate we've gone over time, and Paul has actually had to jump to a customer meeting as well. So I've just got a couple of Q&A questions, but for those who've still joined us there, please rest assured that we'll share a recording of the event as well as answers to all of these questions as soon as possible as well. So I might just lean on you, Tom and Charlie, if you don't mind, for a couple of these questions, but if we're unable to answer them, like I said, I'll get back in touch. So I've just got one from Jin here. So it's, can I copy from a spreadsheet and paste to add multiple sale order lines in bulk, or I have to enter all the lines manually?
You can import them, yes.
Great. And
Yep.
Question for sales orders, what is the maximum number of detail lines in one order?
Would you know? I've never been asked that question. I've never reached the limit. So I would have to find out, but I would have a stab and say it's probably around 256.
No worries.
But I've never had that limitation put on it. So yeah.
We'll confirm that for you, Jim, via email as well there, mate. So question from Matt, can you please discuss make to stock as an alternative to make to order?
Can you do make to order as alongside as make to stock, which you can? Yes, you can.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So based on your net requirements in the for the product, can determine whether it's made to order or whether it's made to just fulfill a requirement for your warehouse.
And just clarification on one thing, Tom, was what you showed a manufacturing process or a warehouse process?
What I showed was a warehouse process based on a manufacturing requirement. So the standard function, what I showed in the warehouse features, is standard for both sales orders and warehouse. And we can segregate the work up as I did for both sales and warehouse manufacturing.
And just one for you there, Charlie, just to clarify, is Power BI part of D365 or is it an additional application with additional licensing?
It's part of Microsoft. It's not part of D365. Dynamics 365 is a feature on its own. Power BI is part of the Microsoft family, and it integrates fantastic with D365, but it's not the same thing. No, the licensing is separate, and it's a completely different tool set. It's an analytical tool versus a ERP tool.
Beautiful, thank you very much. All right, guys, so look, we might wrap it up there. As I said, I'll send a recording out to all of our attendees as well as those who are unable to make it, and I'll just put all of the questions and answers from our Q&A into a spreadsheet for some nice, easy reading. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of our speakers and presenters today. And other than that, we sincerely thank you for joining us today, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.